All right, we're live. What's your language?
You want to take it off now.
See with my mask on. Okay, good. We're live. Everybody watch the language. Now, when we get the link to this, we want to put it on the web page later. But I want to. I'm talking about. We're going to do another one next week, and we're going to do another one the week after that. So I want to place it and just like an announcement or something. Yeah. Okay. All righty. Sounds good. I'm going to go live on Facebook here shortly. I've got a camera on the other end. On the other end. This one's on this end, so it's going to be the stage. It'll be right there. Can you see that? Yep. Okay, the picture's clear and everything. Can you hear me through it? Test, test, 1, 2, 3. You hear me good? Okay. All right, good. Let me go up and test on the microphone. Okay. Test, test. Mic on?
No, I just needed that one.
What?
I just needed that one. These people talking to you now.
Test, test. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me? Did you? Good. Okay, thank you. All right.
And then will you talk to that one?
And then we'll be starting everything. They're starting to come in now. So we'll start everything. It starts at 5:30, but we're already opened up for business. All right. Thank you, David. Keep me monitoring. Make sure it's working. Call me if it ain't. All right. Thanks. Bye. All right. We're live.
Will you talk to that one? We do me a favor. Last favor, I swear. Will you just talk to that mic real quick? Tap on it.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Hey, can we turn the lights on? Right?
That's where they go.
Right again.
They're all dead.
They're all dead.
I put it in work order, but I guess I really got distracted.
All right, so all these back here are dead. All this, those. All right. I mean, I'm good. My camera's good. I got a lot of cameras. But be nice.
I got some flashlights.
Steve, wake up.
Well, how are you? You're making it through. Yeah,
Very surreal.
I know. Twilight Zone. Maybe the thing is maybe get it through that maybe I'll
Please, social distance. So far.
It'd be hard to see where you're at with it. Because amortization out. So I'm not gonna look in here. That's where it could be in that secret. You go over here. That's where we're at. Right here. That's where it's still. Right there. Actually, and right here. Bigger end. I haven't started this yet. Working complaints on you.
Now, how do you get an account YouTube?
You have one with Beaufort County Schools.
Oh,
You
I
just
do?
sign in with your Beaufort County credentials.
Oh, I know that.
Yep. And you just hit, I'm live right now. Been live for 30 minutes.
So we're going right now.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying, people listening? No.
Yes.
No.
Yep, they are. I can
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I believe I can see you. I'm going to step to the side. Good evening. My name is Matthew Cheeseman. I serve as your superintendent for Beaufort County Schools. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm happy that you're here this evening also. In the audience are Board of Education members, so I thank you for being here tonight. And as the function does conclude, you're welcome to come over and have conversation with us as we do entertain and open that opportunity for all of you. On the stage with me are various teammates that are here to help answer any questions that you might have directly. But I think basically we're really all here to talk about where are we now and what does it look like moving forward. And so in this moment, as you know, COVID-19 struck us on March 14th. We were immediately shut down by the governor. And of course, on March 16th, we're suddenly feeding children. March 18th, we're suddenly teaching children online remotely to the best of our ability. And then, of course, we just kind of waited to see what was going on. And so we're in this circumstance right now where the governor has asked us to put together, along with DHHS, to look at Plan A, Plan B, and a Plan C. And really, what does that look like for us as a school system? Well, honestly, anything other than Plan A looks really hard. And that's what we're dealing with right now. And we're hoping to have solutions to some of the many questions that you've been providing to us. But some of those questions are really great, detailed questions that we have to go back and take a strong look at right now. But in short, really wanted to talk about what we've been doing over the last 30 days. Well, specifically, we were hoping to learn from the governor back in May around what school looked like for the end of that year. We also were really hoping for what did graduation look like. Well, we're past that point, and then we were really honestly hoping to hear from the governor about July 1 in terms of what plans and what it would look like for this coming school year. Well, quite frankly, we didn't hear until July 14th, and now all schools in the state of North Carolina, all public schools, let me say it that way, all public schools and public school LEAs or PSUs, whatever you'd like to call us, are now specifically designated as Plan B, as in Bob. But your Board of Education can actually vote to move you to Plan C. So unfortunately, we've heard from many families, from parents, from guardians, from relatives, friends, neighbors, whatever it might be, that have said to us, can you please go with Plan A? We'd love for our children to be in your schools for 5 days a week, and we wish they would be. But in short, we're not able to do that as we're Plan B, which is, in Plan A, the least restrictive. Plan C is the most restrictive. But the governor designated Beaufort County Schools and other public school institutions as Plan B. So what that means is it's a mix of coming to school and not coming to school for your learning. What it means is that you'll do learning inside the classroom and you'll do learning outside of the classroom. And what that means is there will be challenges for all of our teachers in the room, and there'll be challenges for all of our teachers working with students outside of the room. And the reason, if you notice, I don't say, learning in the class and learning at home. Some of our families realize that learning outside of the classroom may be in a different environment other than their home. So we typically say classroom learning or remote learning. Well, that's what Plan B looks like for us. And quite frankly, it's hard. It's hard to figure out what's the best opportunity for us. when we know that 5 days in front of such a talented group of teachers and teacher assistants, where all of our students could actually be in touch with one another, see each other, gain that momentum from each other, that's where we wish our kids would be. But we're in Plan B. So there's some dynamics to it that are far more than what we thought we would ever experience. And so I'm here to talk to you about those dynamics, and then some of what my colleagues behind me will answer some of the questions that you might have. So what does it look like to be a student coming with Plan B if the Board of Education votes to keep that? Well, specifically, kids are going to come to school in groups. So after the board looks at this plan tomorrow night and makes a decision, if it is Plan B, then say, for example, my own student is going to come to school twice a week. And that's either going to be on Monday and Tuesday, back-to-back days, or it's going to be on Thursday and Friday, back-to-back days. And all students in Beaufort County Schools would experience remote learning on Wednesdays. So that means a child will be in school for 2 days, face-to-face, in the room, in the seat, in the school environment for 2 days a week. What it means is for 3 days a week, they will not be. They'll be in a different environment that you'll provide to them. A different environment, meaning it might be at your home, it might be at someone else's home that you know, it might be at your office. It's going to be different. And so we're working behind the scenes to help with that scenario as where is the other place for your students to learn. But under Plan B right now, we're looking at 2 days on, Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday remote, Thursday, Friday back. But again, your child will go to school for 2 days. Now, what are we going to do on those Wednesdays, and why is it that kids do not go to school on Wednesdays? Well, specifically, we're receiving guidance from DHHS and even more so about what does it take to really clean the building? What does it take to really put a safe environment together for students? And be mindful, none of us in the room, or I'll speak for my team, none of us on the team have ever dealt with a pandemic. And the information is changing constantly. For example, last Thursday, after talking with the board last Tuesday, we received more guidance from the state. The previous week, we received guidance from the state. All good information, but it does change things as we go along. And that's why we're actually having more than one forum. We anticipate things could change by next week in terms of how we provide safe environments. And that forum that we scheduled for August 6th, some of you might ask, well, why did you schedule one so late? Well, we do anticipate things might change from the state again, just based off of behaviors. So on that Wednesday, we're going to do everything that we can possibly can to make sure that our environment, our schools are cleaned top to bottom, left to right, every diagonal, upside down, if that makes sense. But in short, we want to make sure that when your children come back to school, it's in a safe place. But the other part of it that we're facing the challenge is, what does learning look like, say on that Monday and Tuesday when a child's in school, and on that Monday and Tuesday when your child is at home? So really, what does that look like? Well, there's greater expectation now. So back in the spring, on March 14th, none of us had warning. Maybe 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes that the district was shutting down. And so our teachers, I mean, bless them all, they rose to the challenge and did the best that they could. But some of it was survival for that matter. Some of it was teachers learning the technology piece of how to work with students, a class full of students all at one time. Well, now on a Monday, Tuesday system, well, you're going to have half your class in school, and the other half of your class will not be in school. They'll be somewhere else learning. But they're synchronous, meaning that a child will follow a class schedule throughout the day. So if your child typically follows the class schedule at school, in theory, your child should follow the schedule while not at school. Meaning if they're set to be in class at 8 a.m. at school, well, on remote days, they should be online just before 8 a.m., wherever they are, say at home. And so this is the challenge that teachers and teacher assistants and counselors and others are now going to face, is how do they actually manipulate it where they're teaching a class in front of them face-to-face and also teaching students online at the same time. But we are trying to provide direct instruction. We listen to what our constituents said in our community about just putting kids online with some type of program, very little interaction at times. We listen to that. So our teachers do want to engage our students. So as an example, on August 17th, if we roll out this Plan B, some of your students will come to school on that very first day, and some of them will stay home. But they'll all be engaged by the teacher on that day. So a student will feel as though they're going to school to the site for 2 days, but we need your help to make sure our kids feel as though they're engaged in school for 5. And I know that just seems really odd to ask, but as a father of a child in the school system, I'm looking at my own daughter saying, you're attending school for 5 days a week. You just might be in a different location for 3 of those days. So what we're really considering and really hoping for is to reach out to you to see what does that look like on your side? And how can you help your students be engaged when they're at home or your workplace or wherever it might be that they're learning? But in short, this is going to be extremely difficult. And there's not a district around that I've talked to that says this is going to be easy. And so we're hoping to be able to have open dialogue with all of you throughout the year to learn from you to see what's working and what's not working. Well, to be honest, to look at our statistics today, over 85% of our employees said that they want to return to work full time, which makes us really excited. Just around 10% said, look, I want to come back in some type of full-time way, but I need to know how to do that safely. And then a very short amount of population said, you know what, we might need to make some accommodations for me just for my own circumstance as an employee. Well, that's exciting to us. A large majority of our employees want to come back to your children. That is very, very exciting to us, especially when you saw the governor's statistics that came out and said 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And so we actually are above the average in that, so we're thrilled. So the key piece now is, where do we go? What do the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks look like as school starts? And so there's a lot of questions in your mind, and many of you posted those questions, and some of those I'll answer for you right now. So as you come into school, you know, the day starts at your house. It doesn't start at our school. The day starts at your location. And actually, some of our employees who are bus drivers are the very first employees who greet our kids. And so in short, the day is going to have to start a little bit earlier, maybe in your home or in your location, meaning that there's going to be a system, a checklist that every single parent is going to have to help us with for every single child in our district. And we as adults have to do the same. Meaning, for those of you in the audience tonight, I believe someone out front did take your temperature. I believe someone out front did ask you 2 or 3 questions. Well, now, in order for your child to come into our building, they're going to experience the same thing. Every single day, Beaufort County Schools is going to collect a form from your child in order to get into the school. That form has the answers to the questions that were asked of you. They're the same questions every single day. And every single day, an adult is going to take their body temperature right on their forehead, standing a good distance away from them to ensure that your child does not have a temperature of 100.4 or higher, which was a designated temperature set for us, not by us. And so considering your day is going to have to start early at home, this is not something that you'll be able to rush them out the door to the bus for. But specifically, every single child is going to have a ticket that gets into the building. And that is their form that you've signed off on that says, I evaluated my child today, and I don't believe he or she has these symptoms. And I did take the temperature of my child. And of course, we're going to take the temperature too. So when the child comes into school, what does it look like, sound like, feel like then? Your child just walked into school. They just gave the form. They just had the temperature check. What's it look like, sound like, feel like? Well, your child is going to go immediately to a classroom. They're going to walk to a homeroom or a first period class. They're going to a destination that's been designated. You will know where they're going. They're going to follow a schedule. But they're not going to loiter in the hallway anymore. They're not going to hang out with their friends on the side. And be mindful, they're going to a space that's been created for them, where 50% of the kids are not in that environment anymore. They're going to a space that's 6 foot setting, meaning that 6 feet between them in all directions. So think through that for a moment. When you think north, south, east, west, and all the diagonals, a typical classroom may have 10 kids in it, may have 12 kids in it, just Depends on the size of the room. But as an example for yourselves who are sitting up front, no two students would be that close to each other in theory in a stationary period. So as an example, our principals and our teachers right now are trying to figure out, what do the classrooms look like? Meaning, how do we set up the environment for our kids? But on that day, the kids will come, they will sit down, they will have an opportunity to learn. And on that day, like you in the audience, they will have a mask on. And that's a sticking point. And I just wanted to address that with you. It's a sticking point. But notice I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not wearing the mask because I'm the lead speaker right now. But if you noticed, I wore my mask to the podium. So you're going to ask me, how on earth is my child going to keep a mask on? And I'm going to respond to you by saying, hopefully with your help. Think through that for a moment. Hopefully with your help. When you think of 5-year-olds up to 18-year-olds, everyone's going to have a certain feeling. And it's hard for us to wear these masks all day long. And when you look at me and say, how can the children wear a mask for 5 hours? I'm going to say to you, hopefully with your help. Because we need to help them understand the importance of that. And also remember, there may be times where they might be able to take it off and wear a face shield instead. Especially in our reading classes where our teachers want to see what they're saying. There may be opportunities they take it off in the building, especially when they're socially away from others, but they're directing some of their own instruction. There might be times of that. But first and foremost, remember, as my job as a superintendent, my job is to create a safe space and environment for not just kids, but also for adults. So we may be actually asking our students to wear those masks because of the adults. And we may be asking the adults to wear the mask because of adults. But honestly, ladies and gentlemen, we're asking our students to wear the mask because the governor told us to. We have to. Every child K through 12 in Beaufort County schools must have a face covering. We did not create that. We're responding to it. So a few weeks back, the governor said, look, anyone from middle school through high school can wear a face covering and all the younger ages don't. Well, on July 14th, he said everyone K-12 is going to wear a face covering. That means every employee. But you're going to find those moments where your child comes home and says, Matthew didn't have his face mask on, or Mr. Cheeseman didn't have his face mask on. But also remember, there are medical exceptions of which we can't tell you about, meaning I can't share medical information about other students. So there may be a time that there is a student in the room who does not have a mask on, and everyone else does. So in short, behind the scenes, we work with medical professionals, we work with the families, we work with Ms. Edwards with our healthcare, and we try to make sure that we accommodate the best. And so if your child specifically has a medical condition that the doctor feels as though the mask should not be on their face, well, then that's something that we can work through. But let's go back to the class. The bell is rung, the students walked in, they have a mask on, they go into the classroom, they sit down, and the teacher begins to engage them in instruction. Now, here's some of the challenges. How do kids hear the teacher when the teacher's talking? Through a mask. How many times have you and I already asked other people to repeat themselves because of the mask? So that's something that we have to work through, meaning, what if the teacher doesn't want to take the mask off or the face mask off to speak? We have to figure that out. That's going to be hard for us. But we're encouraged that we have extremely smart teachers to figure this out. The other part of it too is we expect high engagement. You know, like I said, the spring was a little bit about survival, but now there's engagement, meaning there's great expectation around what teaching and learning should look like. And we have the best educators to do it. So we're looking for dynamic lessons. We're looking for rigorous lessons. But even more so, we're looking for the opportunity of all kids to learn. But we're also looking for that opportunity for your students specifically to be learning with you at home. We're going to need your help. They're going to be in your care or someone else's care for about 60% of the time. And we're going to need your help with that. But the other part too is this doesn't change how our teachers love our students, and this doesn't change about the expectations of learning. It just might change their setting and the tools that they use. And so I'm pleased to say that our Board of Education has put forth much of the federal aid back towards technology to ensure that all students have a device. So even if you don't have the opportunity at home to use that device on broadband internet, you'll still be able to use that device for other assignments. So we're working on other methods in our district to make sure that we reach all students. But go back to the classroom. What does lunch look like in the middle of the day? Because when you think about normalcy, just picture in your mind, kids going down to the cafeteria, teachers walking them down there, high school kids walking themselves, middle school kids walking themselves. Well, the lunch is going to be brought to them now. They're not going to the cafeteria. And quite frankly, that makes it safer in the sense that students will be in a place that they're most comfortable with in their classroom, in their space that's already been designated for them. Remember, it's been cleaned on Wednesdays, even more so than the cleaning that we do Tuesday and Monday. And we're looking for ways to clean on Saturdays, even more so than the way that we did on Friday and Thursday. But lunch will be brought to them now. The key is how much can you limit the interaction of movement down the halls into other spaces. So what might change and feel differently is, my daughter included, may not go to the cafeteria, but it does mean your child will still eat breakfast and lunch. So we're going to make sure that everyone still has what they need in terms of their own nutrition. We're going to make sure that they get the quality meal. And we've got an amazing school nutrition team. I think you saw that back in the spring. Amazing team who's already flipped the switch in order to figure out how specifically to how to feed all of our students, which I'm very excited about. So then some of your questions asked online, well, what does that look like for students in terms of other activities, such as music and art? I think some of you asked me about PE, and you asked about all the other non-core classrooms. Do kids still get to go to those environments? Well, quite frankly, it really depends on the school and how your administrative team, how your school improvement team, specifically how the teachers would like to engage the students. So it's not a blanket answer. It's not going to say that every art teacher in Beaufort County walks down to the students. It really may depend on what their room looks like, what their curriculum looks like, what their activities look like, how they can bring it to you. But I don't want you to think that we're canceling any of those types of courses. Those courses are essential for our students. So the dynamics may look a little different at the beginning of the year, but it's something that we hope we can still engage our kids with. And so when I think back to your questions, and I said to you just a few minutes ago, the day starts early at your house or at your place. Well, that's because you're checking your child, you're checking that form, you're making sure they have their mask. So let's talk about those masks. Where do you get them from? Well, the governor just recently released a $20 million funding package that said all schools in the state, all public schools in the state of North Carolina would get 5 reusable masks per child. Well, we don't think that's going to be enough. So Beaufort County Schools has already purchased more. Plus we purchased face shields. So we're going to be ready. We're going to ask that you work with your children at home to maybe use a mask that you think is best for them. Maybe pick one out together. If you think that they like one in the store that they love and you think you can afford it, get it. Maybe, use it as part of their attire that they love. Use it as part of, the way that they feel good about themselves. But also remember, whatever's on the mask still has to follow the Board of Education policy on school dress code. So there are some things that should not be on your mask. But we are purchasing different types of mask items and face shields and other materials for our employees. So you know something, it's going to be a connection point. When kids walk in and it's the first day and they're all looking at their different masks, it may just be a connection point for some time. But it's so very important that you do that. But specifically, again, the day starts early at your place in order to get everything checked off. Well, what happens if you're a bus rider? Well, there's a few things. The initial guidance that came specifically from the state that said, look, we want you to take the temperature of the student before they got on the bus. Well, I can say to you, it really didn't sit favorably with some of us that we would want the bus at the side of the road or even in the middle of the road at 6 in the morning with the flashing lights on and it's pitch dark outside and we're taking the temperature of your child, who, since the bus driver can't legally get out of their seat while the bus is engaged, has to come on the bus anyway to take the temperature. So what we're specifically doing under Plan B is that your children would get on the bus. They would have their mask on. They would have their question sheet. They would show it to the driver. If all is well, they get to sit on the bus. If all is not well, you get to take them home, because we cannot do that. But also know that the guidance originally said that you had to do 6-foot social distancing spacing on the bus. But they've now come, which would have meant that our buses would have carried about 8 children. Where now you can actually put 1 student per seat on the bus, unless you have a family, and then you can sit side by side like that on the bus. So think again, at home, it starts early. Your child goes through the protocol with you, meaning, are you coughing? Have you been exposed? Or have you been to a place that had a high exposure? Have you had a fever lately? Just a simple questionnaire. And then let's say your bus or your student takes that bus ride. They're on the bus, they pull up to the school, then what happens? Well, they're going to get off the bus with their paper. And they're going to come to the entry point of the school. And then they're going to be met by a team of professionals who are then going to take that form, look through it, and then take the temperature of your child. And if your child's temperature is 100.4 or less, they get in the door. If not, someone's going to greet them outside. Someone like Miss Edwards. They're going to bring them down to an isolation room, and then they're going to call you. Because honestly, sometimes temperatures change once they get on the bus, especially if you put them on the bus at 100.0. It might be 101 by the time they get to school. You might be hearing from us. So it looks different, it sounds different, it feels different. The lines might be a little bit longer in carpool, meaning it just might take longer because not everyone's going to get on the bus. And also, it might just take longer because, quite frankly, it takes longer to take everybody's temperature. But man, for sure, we want you to feel safe that when you walk in the door, that you know everyone has been screened, including every single adult in the building. Everybody has been screened. And so you might have that funny little note with me that says, who screens the first person in the door? We're figuring that out, right? So that's one of those moments that we need to figure out. Can we do self-screening on video to prove it, whatever it might be. Look, we want people to be safe. So we talked a little bit about entry. We talked a little bit about classroom. We talked a little bit about school. We talked a little bit about lunch. We talked a little bit about transportation. Let's talk about wellness really fast, which is probably a conversation that should go slower. But let's talk about wellness. Or without showing me a hand, just think in your mind, how many of you in the room have really seen behaviors in your children since March? Those behaviors just change. They just seem different. Now, how many of you have had behavior changes also? It's just very, very different right now. And so we want to have an inclusive, open, inviting environment in our school system. And we're going to do that. Again, we have the best personnel around to help us with that. But remember, wellness really starts with you also. And so the key part about it is we want our kids to be well inside the school, not just physically, but mentally. But we want you to be well too, not just physically, but mentally. And we need our employees to feel well and feel supported, not just physically, but mentally. This is a challenging time for so many. We've had a fair amount of parents who have been furloughed, have lost jobs, have had to change life, whatever it might be. And we recognize that. And so our schools are going to work very closely with you as there are challenges through all of this. But we want you to know that we're ready as a team to take on some of the challenges that your students are having. We're ready as a team to take on some of the life challenges that you might be having. And so specifically, don't count us out. Look at us as a partner in that, because we just want to make sure kids are going to be okay. We want to make sure that our community is going to be okay. So there may be times at home in the morning where you get up early, you fill out the form, and you just realize this is going to be a bad day for me. Call us, talk with us, talk with your teachers, let them know, hey, just give me a forewarning, it's a bad day. And sometimes, even if your child is not temperature sick or temperature ill, if they're just having a hard time, yes, they could stay home and remote learn. So if your child's supposed to be at school on a Monday and Tuesday, but on that Tuesday you wake up and the child's not feeling well, sure, stay home and remote learn. Because in that remote learning, their attendance is still counted. They're in the class, the teacher can see them. Don't think that they're not present. They're still valued and counted. So let's talk about a few other things real quick. Let's talk about school, the purpose of it. So for example, we want students to learn. So what does it look like to teach and learn? And what does it look like for your student? And we've listened to you. And Ms. Lilly might be able to say more to this fact. But we're really trying to make sure that we have lessons that your students can, quite frankly, engage in. You know, even back in the spring, sometimes I would look at things and I would realize, wow, goodness, I might have to run to the store to get that. And then I would realize, well, goodness, there's some of my own parents here that can't run to the store to get that. So we're trying to look at things that are appropriate for you to do at home with your students, but are still applicable to what's happening in class in this synchronous learning. But you should still see counselor interaction, teacher interaction, social interaction with other students. You should see all of that. But I also want to caution you, as we learned last semester, if the teacher can hear your child online, we can hear all of you. All right, so just smile a little bit, realize we hear the family stories in the background. Please put your student in a place where they can have good learning, but also know there were some moments last year where we could hear other things live. So just be mindful of that in any type of remote learning. So some of you asked about athletics, because that's a way to keep your child well. Well, quite frankly, the North Carolina High School Athletic Association suspended athletics until September 1st. And honestly, many school districts across the state have already suspended them indefinitely. We value athletics. We know it's an amazing program for many of our students. Keeps them healthy. It's great for their own development, not just physically, but even mentally, some of the challenges that they go through. And we hope one day to offer it again, meaning all the way through our system, especially middle school and high school sports, but some of those decisions are beyond our own. And so as we look at some of the programs that we're really going to lose out on right now, such as field trips, maybe virtual for our kids. I know especially some of our younger grades love going to the aquarium and other places. We're going to have to wait on all of that right now. So in short, think about your school day. How does it apply to you? And one of the questions that came up is, okay, we're going to be safe in the building. We have all of these procedures in place. We have these protocols. We believe we know how your children are going to enter the building. We believe we know how we're going to engage them inside the building. We believe we know who they're going to be with as our schools create class schedules. And so when do you learn some of that information? Well, each one of our schools specifically is putting a group A and a group B together, just like a typical class schedule. Once they finalize all of that, they'll communicate it with you. Very challenging to separate not just class rosters, but then divide them in half. Very challenging to ensure that all of our families have their kids going to school on the same day. So if you have 3 kids in the system, and they might be at 3 different schools, we want to make sure that all the same day you've got kids coming to Beaufort County. We understand the child care scenario behind it is difficult. And so moving through that, you know, when you think about the day, what does the end of the day look like? Meaning when kids are coming home, well, they're going to get back onto the bus, specifically one per seat, or they're going to be, you know, met by you in a car rider line. That system doesn't change. However, all of us are still going to have our masks on. All of us are still going to be safe. And at the end of the day, we're going to clean our buildings and our buses to the best of our ability. And so moving back on a few things, this is going to be hard. And it looks strange and it feels strange. But some of you are very concerned as if student A tests positive inside of the classroom, what does that mean for my student in that classroom? Or even if my teacher tests positive in the classroom, what does that mean for our students? And even more so in your questions that you asked me, how many students does it take to test positive in the classroom before you shut the whole classroom down? And some of your questions came as to how many total COVID cases does it take to shut the building down? Well, those are all amazing questions that we've been working with Ms. Edwards, but also James Madsen from our health department on. And to be quite honest with you, it's really on a case-by-case scenario. So there's some models out there that say, if you've been within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more, next to an individual, most recently, demand for sure that you too should be tested. But so what does it look like from a communication point of view from a school system who can't necessarily tell you which student tested positive because of medical confidentiality? Well, what we're going to do is, if in fact a student tests positive in the class or the adult, we're going to let you know. We're going to communicate with you directly. A call may come home to you, and this is why it's important to always have your phone information updated. Or a letter is going to come home to you very quickly, depending on the severity of the case, to tell you that, in fact, an individual tested positive in that classroom, or in fact, an individual tested positive in the school. So you will be kept in the loop. We will give you knowledge that something has occurred, but we are going to work with our health officials and those around us to ensure specifically what's in the best interest for that classroom specifically, and even more so for the entire school system. And then, of course, we'll work with the board about moving forward in terms of what it looks like for the school. But we're working very closely with our health department. I think, Ms. Edwards, Mr. Mattson, and I have become really great family friends lately in terms of, all the conversations that we have to have. So in your mind as a family, and you think to yourself, well, specifically, I've sent my child to school, and he or she looks fine when they come home. What do I do tomorrow? Wake up tomorrow, go back through your form, go back through the attestation form, and every single day of school, you're going to have to take the temperature of your child and go through that specific checklist every single day. And the child has to have the form to come to school. So you're going to ask yourself, well, where do I get the form? Well, back to school night is going to be really important. We're also going to post the form on our website, but specifically, your child's going to be given about 30 copies of the form at back to school night. So you'll have a good month's supply when you come out of back to school night. But also you'll be able to get it online, as I said. But specifically, there are some things that we're looking at to really make this environment work well for us. So one or two other questions, and then I'll open it to the floor for your questions. But specifically, we talked about safety. We've talked about school. We've talked about protocols. We have talked about lunch. We've talked about transportation. So let's talk about transition. What does it look like for when kids are moving through the building from one place to the other? For example, if my child has 3 or 4 different classes, do they get to move to another classroom? Again, that's going to come back to how the school builds it based off the total number of students inside their building. So there may be times where your students switch classes. There may be times where your students stay in a class. So what's really important about switching classes, though? That they go into an environment that's been wiped down or cleaned. That's going to be important to us. That we specifically are able to wipe down the tables, able to wipe down the chairs. And you've seen this. You've been out in the public. So you've seen how you sometimes have to wait until surfaces are wiped down. There's just going to be more expectation and hope of a lot of tolerance and patience. Meaning as we move students through the building, that the areas they're going to and the areas they're coming from are cleaned appropriately. All right, last thing, and this is pretty big. What happens if you decide specifically that you would not want to have your child in this, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday scenario? Well, specifically, the governor has outlined an opportunity for you that we will offer remote learning to your child 100%. Meaning that, as an example, my child doesn't have to come to school to the building every day. They would be on remote learning. So they would have their technology, they would be working with their teachers, they would be working synchronously with their teachers, meaning as the class is engaged, your child's engaged. Your child might at times even see the class, not just the teacher. But you would be able to do that from home. There may be scenarios where if there's a fair amount of students in your school who all want to be on remote learning, there may be a different teacher assigned to that group of students. So in short, if you're worried about plan B of going, partially in session and partially remote, you can move to all online learning. So considering that, it's an option. Now, how do we get to that point? Well, specifically, you should anticipate a call from your school shortly. I'd say within the next 5 to 7 business days. A call coming to you from either a principal, a teacher, a counselor, a representative of the school that your child attends. And they're going to ask you, Matthew, is your child coming to school this year, and in what type of environment or what type of option? Is your child coming to school under Plan B, where he or she will come Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday? Or would you like 100% remote learning? So it's an option for you. But let's talk about that option. In remote learning, it doesn't specifically mean under that 100% remote that you do remote learning for 5 days this week, and then you decide next week you want your child to come for 2 days, and then 5 days the following week. That's not what we mean. What we're really asking for you to do as a family is to help us as an institution is specifically if you opt into remote learning, that you opt into that for a fair amount of time. And so we're considering in our Plan B proposal to the board, really looking at what 9 weeks looks like, a quarter, not a semester. Other districts around us are saying semesters, but we're looking at what a quarter would look like. Meaning that specifically, if you had your child opt into remote learning 100%, that for the next 9 weeks, they're going to be online. What happens if you have an issue 5 weeks in? You've had a family circumstance change. Unlike other institutions around us, we're going to take your child. Of course we are. We love them so much. If you come back and say to your principal, listen, it's been 5 weeks in and this is not working, can you please put them back into a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday scenario? Of course we can. But we also want to make sure that that child can handle the transition. But always know we're here for you. We want our children to be with us. So if they're 5 or 6 weeks in, it is not working, you've had a family dilemma, the world is flipping upside down, your mental wellness is going poor, your child is sad, missing their friends, missing the school teacher, we're taking your baby back. Absolutely. But also remember, in remote learning, that child is still our responsibility. So just please know, in remote learning, they would still be online most every day with all of our teachers during the same class in the same schedule. It's synchronous. So just think about what we talked about a little bit. So we talked about what's it look like first thing in the morning at your home. We're going to need to wake up a few minutes earlier. We're going to need to have a really great breakfast, and if you can't have one at home, we're going to have it for you at school. But the lines might be a little bit longer in duration, not necessarily longer in cars. But be mindful, plan ahead, because I know you're going to go to work or you're running somewhere. So in terms of your wellness, plan ahead, right? When your child gets to our school, there's that attestation form. There's the ticket in the door that says you checked them. And we're going to take the temperature and say, we agree. And then they're going to school, and you're going to trust us to do it right. And then when they come home from school, you need to talk to them every single day. Ask your children the hard questions. What worked well? What didn't work well? Was there ever a time today that you felt scared? Was there ever a time today that you gave help to another student? Was there ever a time today that you felt proud of yourself? Please just don't ask students if their day was good. Ask them hard questions. We need to keep them mentally secure. But the other part of that too is, what does the communication and expectation look like for teachers now? Do you know how many of our teachers worked 14-hour days or more last spring? Oh my goodness. I applaud them. I mean, I just want to hug them up. We love our teachers. But they worked 14-hour days. And if you don't believe me, you should have stood in my house as I watched my very own child's teachers working at 7:30, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, trying to answer questions for students online. So what we're going to ask is to really protect the wellness of our educators and realize that even if we have students in session in the building, or if your student is in remote session, that our buildings are open 100%. Meaning you should be able to call the school and leave a message for the teacher. Someone's going to answer the phone. We're open for business under Plan B. Our staff is there. So instead of trying to catch up with the teachers late at night, that put a burden on you, that put a hardship on others at times, call during the day, send an email. But we want to make sure that our teachers have the opportunity, along with you, to value their children as a family, to value their wellness. And so we're going to work throughout those days. And of course, our teachers, they're still gonna work 10 hours. I'm just asking for them not to work 14. They're still gonna work long hours, I understand. But we're gonna ask each other to make sure that the assignments going home are appropriate in terms of time spent. So you as a family can still love your children and have time with them. And vice versa, we're gonna ask that we make sure that none of our teachers have to work late into the evening, trying to answer the questions that can be answered during the day. And so again, let's just review. So as you leave, you think about what we talked about, what the school day looks like. We talked a little bit about transportation. We talked about school nutrition. We talked about instruction. We talked about health, safety, and wellness. We talked about how we're going to clean our buildings. We talked about instruction of wanting our children to do the best and be mentally well and able. So with that, we're going to open up the floor. I believe there's a microphone in the middle here. If you have very specific questions, we invite you to the microphone, or the microphone might come to you. I believe we're going to invite you to the microphone. We have a panel of really thoughtful people behind me, and we have others in the room that might help us. But specifically, we want to answer any of your questions at this time. Thank you.
I really just have one question. Is the school online going to be different? Because I know my child had problems with certain teachers not being online and doing the classwork and it not getting to the teacher. The online would be synchronous with their current teacher that they have, so they would log on just like they would all day long in a remote environment. And then they would just continue to be with the students that are in the classroom at the same time. And my other question is, I do have a child that's in band. Now, is she still going to be able to do band, or should I look for an alternative way for her band?
I think that's a great question. Specifically, we're hoping that our students can still engage in the activities that they would like to do, but we still need to work with those professional educators inside their environment to see what it looks like, sounds like, feels like. Now, if it were marching band and we were outside all the time and we're 6 feet apart and a really cool design on the field, I say this is great. But having been in band and understanding some of the instrumental abuse that goes on when you have to put a musical instrument up to your mouth, and we know how COVID transmits, I can say that you might still have band class, but it just might look like, sound like, and feel a little different. But we're still hoping to offer courses to our students that, one, are required for graduation, but also, two, are right towards the center core of their interest. It just might be designed a little bit differently.
Thank you.
Thank you, great question. Any other questions? Fantastic. Anything from the board? Anyone want to ask? All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate your time this evening. Specifically, please know that we have another parent forum on the 28th, which is next week. That parent forum is at Northside High School, and we still invite you to come. You can come on the Facebook Live to look at it, and know that tomorrow night, the Board of Education is going to look at Plan B. So they have consideration of voting on that. And in that model, it is, as I said, Group A, Monday, Tuesday, Group B, Thursday, Friday, with Wednesday remote. All right, but with that, if you have other questions, feel free to email me directly. Feel free to give us a call. But we're in it to work very closely with your children. And I absolutely applaud all of you for coming out tonight or joining us online. And thank you very much for your trust as we try to educate your children with a world-class education. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
I'm trying to get through. Put the lights on. That's all right. Just don't cut this side off yet.